Hi, everyone. I'm Gold Derby News and Features Editor Ray Richmond, and I'm here today with Matt Quayle, the Emmy-winning composer of HBO's stirring, star-powered, made-for-TV movie, The Great Lillian Hall. Matt, I'll give you the ultimate compliment about your work on this movie. As I watched it and the music that you composed swelled, I cried two different times, actual tears running down my face. And that absolutely never happens with me. So thanks a lot.
I feel like I did my job.
You did, your work here is done. Just briefly, actually, the film stars Jessica Lange as a legendary Broadway star, fearfully facing the ticking clock of time while doggedly working to defy it. And it co-stars Kathy Bates, Pierce Brosnan, and Lily Rabe. So, Mac, how did you approach crafting the musical stylings for this film? What was your goal in helping to establish the mood for it?
Well, the process started like, practically every other project. It was a conversation with the director, Michael Christopher, who, for those keeping score at home, uh, among many other things, was an actor in the show Mr. Robot that I scored, and we met through that, and he asked me to score this wonderful film. And in talking to him about it, uh, you know, we recognize that this is an intimate story about Lillian Hall and this sudden dementia that she's experiencing, and so we thought that it needed some music that it shouldn't be too big. It needed to be a little more intimate, and so we chose the ensemble. It's like chamber strings and piano. So it was nine strings and piano, and it felt right. It felt like it was doing what it needed. There's maybe a couple of moments in the very end of the film where we made it a little bigger, but basically it needed to have this intimate sound, and and musically Michael was really into this idea of it being like a little bit classical, um, but that would maybe sound like there was something not quite right with it, so it wouldn't be too normal. So when I sat down to write my first theme, like that's what I was thinking about, trying to have a sort of a vaguely classical piece that sounded like just a little bit broken.
And a little bit more low key and not too big, um, which I guess makes sense because you don't want it to overwhelm anything, and you don't want it to. I guess it's easy to go over the top musically with things like this, and have it feel, a little manipulative.
Exactly, exactly. We didn't want to push anything too hard. That was always something we were talking about. Did this moment need music, and or not? And if it did, like, should it be very subtle, or does it need more than that? And we certainly did have moments where we pushed it harder, but there's a lot of very subtle moments in the film as well.
Is that something you typically do as a composer? I mean, do you try to blend in more and be a little less well, obviously you don't want to be obtrusive, but I mean unobtrusive, where you err on the side of blending and not taking things over too much.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, it's composers are human. We have egos, so it's like we're writing music, we want it to be heard. We want somebody to recognize us, but that's not always the job. The job is to help the filmmaker tell the story, and to give them that tool that they need. And if it means that it's just barely sort of supporting something and not doing a whole lot, then that's what we need to do. And related to that, there's I think a lot of people that watch movies and television, they don't necessarily notice the music, even if it is prominent and doing a lot. They don't notice it, but it does make them feel things. It does affect their experience. but I've had a lot of conversations with people that are just kind of in the general public that are not music people. And I said, yeah, I did the music for this film, and they're like, oh, you wrote the songs? And I was like, no, I did the score. That, oh, there's other music, like, so it's an interesting thing that can happen. Not to me, because I'm always listening for the music, but um, there's a saying, when composers are doing their job well, uh, nobody notices us.
You know, I got to say that's probably true, Mac. You know that there are times where if you had asked me what this music sounded like on certain projects, if I'm not paying attention specifically for the composition and the score, that would be true of me as well, where I would be like, uh, I wasn't necessarily listening, but I imagine you could certainly tell if it was missing. You know, where it was like,
Yes,
wow, it just
you
feels
you you
it
notice something
feels
is
empty.
missing when we're not there. Yes.
Right. It would feel empty. And obviously your job is incredibly important on a film project because it really does help, you know, kind of inspire the mood and uh you know, play along with the characters. And it seemed like to that end, Mac, you look to create kind of almost a different musical template for those moments in the Great Lillian Hall when Lillian was hallucinating, you know, about seeing her husband. You know, that almost seemed like a different template entirely, like you were almost doing it for a different movie. Would that be accurate?
So you were definitely paying attention,
I
and
was.
I appreciate that, because yes, it was, and it was intentional. For many of the scenes in the film, you know, the sound, the palette, like I mentioned, was the nine strings and piano. But for the what we called them the dementia scenes, um, you know, some of them were almost scary. Um, she was very disoriented. She didn't know what was happening, and so we went a more of electronic direction there, and which, you know, is a sound that I'm well versed in, and so it was fun sort of blending those two, you know, the very organic piano and strings, and then the electronic, and sometimes they would happen in the same scene. I think there was a rehearsal where, you know, everything's going fine, and the music's kind of just supporting the movement, and then she starts forgetting her lines, and now the music is overtaken with the sort of a darker electronic sound that I hope underscores the, you know, the tension and the fear that she was having in these moments.
No, it really did. Really illustrated them orally beautifully. Uh, do you typically? I know you'd mentioned Michael Christopher, who was an actor in Mr. Robot, and that's how your relationship was formed. Do you typically work a lot with your director in composing the music? Is that your primary partner in film, I guess, or in projects, or does it just depend?
I mean, that typically is the person who's guiding the music. I mean, there will be projects where producers might take more of an active role in that, but yeah, typically it's the director composer relationship which guides the music, um, and so we we were never in the same room during work on this. He was in New York, and he was also, they shot the film in Atlanta, and I'm in Los Angeles. But we a number of phone calls and Zooms, um, and he would, you know, I would send him the music, and he would listen and give me notes, and I would make changes, and we kind of and that's how we did it, and it really was right out of the gate. Um, I found a very enjoyable and compatible collaboration. You never know, you know. He seemed like a really nice guy. I loved his acting that I knew, but what was I going to get once I started sending him music? And it just was we got along great. It was really a good experience.
Have you had projects where it didn't work out nearly so well?
I mean, I've had a couple, mostly I've been fortunate that I get teamed up with collaborators um, that I develop a respect for their ideas. I mean, uh, I tell everyone when I begin a project, certainly the first time, that my job is to help them tell their story. And yes, I'm the composer. I'm going to write the music, but that doesn't mean I know exactly what music is right for your story. You need to help guide that process. And so I want the feedback. I want the notes. And um, I've been fortunate that so many collaborators give me notes that I feel make it better, and it served. And I was like, oh, why didn't I think of that? It's so simple. Yeah, and now this little change has made it, you know, possibly a better piece of music, and certainly a tool for telling the story.
What's the first thing you do, Mac, when you find out you're going to be composing on a project? Do you dive into research on the subject or meet with the producers, or I guess does it just depend on, does it vary?
Um, yeah, well, I guess on this one, I I had a conversation with Michael, and they sent me the script, and I read the script, and that's what sold me on it. So I didn't get to see anything first. So I had read the script, and then Michael and I talked more about, some of his ideas, the sort of vaguely classical sound, and then at that point, it was just about like starting to come up with a few ideas. And I only had a few rough sketches going when they did send me the first picture. And it was very rough just in the beginning stages of editing, but I was able to take that and start refining my ideas, and then we were kind of off and running from there.
Do you have a, you must have a custom sound library that you regularly call on, I imagine. Um, does that does that go a long way toward helping you on your scores?
I mean, it can, again, every score is different. On this project, we knew from the beginning that we wanted to record the strings and the piano. So I intentionally tried not to make it sound too good, the demos. You know, if um if I'm working on something where we're not going to record, and I'm trying my best to make the orchestral sound as realistic as possible, then that's another approach. But here, it's like we knew we were going to record it, so I didn't want to make it sound too great. People can fall in love with the demo and then not want to record the real instruments. So I
Wow.
wasn't using really custom. I wasn't going too all out on the orchestral sounds, the string sounds initially, because we knew they would all be replaced.
Do you do a lot of live orchestral stuff too? That has to be a much more expensive option, I'm imagining, than digitally generated.
It is more expensive. It's also more work intensive as well. I've been doing more of it. I'm really enjoying it and wanting to work more in that space. I had a film that came out at the end of last year called Leave the World Behind, directed by Sam Esmail, who I worked with on Mr. Robot.
That's right.
And we recorded orchestra for that. And I've done some on some TV shows, and so yeah, I welcome more rooms filled with talented musicians. It's there's nothing like it.
You also work a lot in the Ryan Murphy world between Pose and Ratchet, and of course, especially composing for 9 seasons on American Horror Story. How did that relationship come to be? Ryan seems like he really values the importance of music in everything he does.
I mean, it was a very sudden, surprising event that happened. I mean, I had met one of Ryan's producers, Alexis Martin Woodall, and I got a call one day. This was in 2014, and she says, "Hey, we're going in a different direction on American Horror Story this season. By any chance, are you available to write a cue for us this afternoon? And I happened to be available, and I said yes. And I wrote the piece. They sent me some, a scene. I wrote the piece. She loved it. Said we're playing it for Ryan tomorrow. And then the next morning, my phone rang again, and I said hello, and it's her, and she says, "Can I speak to the new composer of American Horror Story?" And it was like less than 24 hours, and it was really like the first substantial project on my own. I'd been working for other composers and doing like smaller indie projects and stuff myself, but yeah, it was pretty exciting, and everything just sort of took off like a rocket at that point.
What was your favorite American Horror Story season that you worked on? You must have a favorite.
They're all so different. I mean, that first season that I worked on was season 4, Freak Show, and so I think it might be my favorite just because it was the first one. So because it felt so exciting that I had finally gotten like my own show, and it was just really yeah, I was just excited to go to work every day, and I I was just getting really creative and throwing all this stuff at them, just music that was like really out there and really creative, and they were loving it. And so that just made it even more exciting. And I got to keep doing that on the next 8 seasons as well. But I don't know, Hotel season 5 is another favorite. The 1984, the sort of 80s slasher style was another favorite. But they've all been they've all been special in their own way.
Seems like you're able to do a lot of experimentation on a show like that, in so many different styles, and visually as well as orally. So it seems like a perfect, like kind of a dream job for a composer like you.
It really is, and it's many times a long running show is it's one story that just goes on and on, season after season after season. Mr. Robot was like that, 4 seasons. We kept building upon a sound, developing a library of music. But Horror Story changes every year, and it's a new cast, a new story, new characters, and so we start over every year, and that's exciting and also a little terrifying because there's a blank page like at the beginning of every season, and now what are we going to do? And this past season, season 12, was this that same thing. What are we going to do here? And they had written into the script Rockabye Baby. It was like a sort of a big motif throughout the season. There's a lot about babies in the season, and
That's
a
right.
lot of people a lot of people singing the song. And so I decided to try making a theme out of it, where I took it and put it in a minor key and sort of twisted it around a little bit and ended up with what became the main theme of the season. And it was I think a little bit subliminal. It wasn't like really obvious that that's what it was, but it was a fun jumping off point.
I remember that. It was actually really creative and beautifully done. Rockabye Baby, such a strange song to begin with. When you think of the words, that this is something they're using to calm and reassure, tiny children and toddlers, and their bow is breaking and the baby's gonna fall, and oh my God. No wonder we all grow up needing therapy.
Yeah, it does seem to be a theme in American Horror Story. Number of seasons where they get pretty creepy with babies. It's like
Yeah,
they like that over there.
totally. Um, I think we're going to leave things there. The Great Lillian Hall streams over Max. Matt Quayle, best of luck this Emmy season to you, and thanks for joining us today at Gold Derby.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.